Hello from New Zealand. This is Maniacal Cackle, and I am doing my second week of pool analysis for Resurrectionist. So I'm just looking at what I'm playing in the next round of the October Vassal tournament, and I'm going to go through all the different masters and what Resers have to offer. Um, so I'm going to be against Bayou as the attacker. So a lot of what I say, I'll occasionally be referencing the Bayou matchup specifically. Its corner symbols on this map over here, River Source, and the scheme pool is bait and switch, deathbeds, spread them out, catch and release, and outflank. So I just want to go through and kind of explore the matchup through each part of the pool, and then at the end I'll try to give some of my top picks. So one thing to note for corner symbols is Resers are pretty amazing at it. We have three models that are just absolute all-stars for it. Dead Rider, Monos the Risen, and Yin all are very, very good on corner symbols, and they can be taken to almost any crew. One caveat is that they all have target numbers to get their stuff done, like they need 5s and 6s. And so that can end up a little bit card hungry, especially since you have to take at least 2 of them for a lot of masters in this pool. For instance, Dead Rider and Yin are a very, very potent combo for scheming. But that is potentially you need a 6 for Dead Rider's Ride with Me, and you need a 5 for Yin's Dark Bargain, and that really does start to add up, especially if you have other TNs in your crew. So that's something to be a little bit conscious of when picking a master and building lists. And so as for masters that are good for this pool, Molly corner symbols is very, very great for her. She can pick all 3 of the above models and Archie and have the card draw to support them, and she can have Krooligans teleporting. On top of that, if she wants, she can pivot into hiring Toshiro, and Toshiro is worth a special mention on any symbols pool where you are not against a Don't Mind Me faction. And so you can check if you're against a Don't Mind Me faction by just searching for the phrase Don't Mind Me in the app against that faction. And the reason is Toshiro can summon Ashigaru to guard symbols, and then that can make them very, very annoying to actually claim those symbols, unless they have Don't Mind Me models who just walk up and pick them up, like Outcast Tara, for instance, doesn't really care about Ashigaru guarding symbols. So Molly's got access to all those options. Yanlo as well. Yin and Monos are actually in his keyword. So he's really good. Yanlo 1 is an amazing scheme runner himself. Once he's got about 3 of those upgrades on him, he can just move around the board as much as he wants, picking up symbols willy-nilly. So Yanlo is basically unstoppable for scoring symbols for his first title. His second title deserves a special mention as well, because it is also really good at doing symbols, and on top of that, his second title is really good at drawing cards efficiently, and that means that you're more likely to be able to do Toshiro summons, and again, helps with those TNs. So I find Yanlo 2 with Toshiro is really, really good on this pool. Molly 2 is worth a mention here as well, because I've often said I really, really want to try Molly 2 on corner symbols, because it seems like she would be amazing at it, because she can get Night Terrors to just sprint across the board. I have moved a Night Terror like 15 or 20 inches in a single activation with Molly before, and of course you can make it interact as part of that process, so that's just, Molly can really jet those Night Terrors across the board, which is ideal on corner symbols where you have that room to maneuver. I find Riva and Seamus I both like on corner symbols. They're both highly maneuverable. They have crews that can be pretty maneuverable, like Seamus just can take Dead Rider and Yin, and who fit his crew's theme pretty well anyway. Riva can take Dead Rider, she can take Bete Noir, she can take Bone Piles to teleport around the table. So she just ends up with a lot of tools. So I've ranked 4 Reser Masters as green on corner symbols, because we just have so many options. Von Stuck, he used to be, I would say, green tier for this, like S tier realistically. but he's gotten a few mobility nerfs. The Necropunks and the Undergraduates both were hit, and I think he plays more of a bubble play style is when he's at his absolute strongest. So while he can definitely do corner symbols, I don't think he's as oppressive as he once was on it, so I've given him a yellow ranking. Kirai, I've also put as yellow because while she's very, very good at doing corner symbols in a vacuum, one issue that summoners have is you can just kill all of the non-summoned models in gaining ground 2, and then nobody can pick up the strategy markers, right? So that's a big issue in this gaining ground for summoners, is that when all your original hires die, you can no longer do the strategy, and you really, really feel that on corner symbols because you have to trek all the way across the board with your models that are trying to score, so that can be quite a dangerous process. Jackdaw, I've surprisingly marked yellow and not red for corner symbols because I know it's a bit of a meme that you would never take Jackdaw into corner symbols. I personally think maybe it would be worth a go. His crew is based on staggered, so he can actually make it really difficult for the opponent to get his models across the board, which can be important. And I've done some testing and it's pretty easy to get Jackdaw to the center line or further for his activation. So you can pretty much guarantee that he's starting to land those curses turn 1, and then people are just staggered for the rest of the game. And being staggered for the entire game is not what you want on corner symbols. So I think Jackdaw probably has some game into corner symbols. Dr. McMorning, I've kind of marked red here in that, like, he could do it, but, like, that's really not where he wants to be. Like, he wants his crew having to fight a little bit. He doesn't offer anything special. His crew's all a bit squishy. He doesn't offer much card draw for the all-stars up at the top. So he's fine, but he's just so far behind the other Resurmasters, I had to mark him red. For the pool, for the map, we've got this map here, and so there's some noteworthy things about it. First off, these rivers and these forests up top are absolutely game-defining in my mind, because no matter which corner you end up picking, that severe terrain can matter because somebody can put some symbols of authority there. You may have to cross it when you're leaving your deployment zone, or you may have to cross it to get symbols, but whatever happens, you're probably going to have to deal with those rivers in this pool. There is a lot of blocking terrain, which is, for instance, really relevant to Seamus, so pretty much wherever you want to go on the board with him, you'll be able to go. And there's a couple of choke points, so there's this big old choke point here, and a shout out to Hoffman and Guild in Arcanist. Hoffman 2 can make a jail out of this, so careful to bring marker removal if you're facing Hoffman. So that's a bit rough. There's a choke point here. There's like, this is not that big a gap. This is not that big a gap. So 50mm bases are something that you gotta be worried about if they're not placing. So even Dead Rider might struggle a little bit more than you would normally expect on this map because of those choke points. Riva as well. And so you can see over here on the map, normally Riva would be a home run on this map, but those choke points are what made me put her down to a yellow status. For the green status, I've got Von Stuck, Seamus, Kirai, and Molly. Von Stuck, Molly, and Kirai are all really good at ignoring that terrain. It is worth mentioning Molly 2 is not that great at ignoring that terrain. I'd probably put her down to a yellow, and part of the reason for that is that she her Night Terrors push when they discard, but that push doesn't ignore terrain, so the Night Terrors are going to be slowed down. She herself doesn't ignore terrain, so she's being slowed down by it. Whereas Molly 1, her key model, she can take Mono, she and Archie and just ignore that terrain as much as she likes, which is really, really nice. Kirai, of course, and Corporal Crew, Trivial, Von Stuck, Necropunks, Valedictorian, and students of Viscera, they just ignore that sort of stuff. Seamus, all that blocking terrain, pretty much wherever you want to go, you're going to be able to teleport. One thing to note is if you start in this bottom left, the initial secret passage is a tiny bit awkward, but you just fix that with a copycat killer teleport on turn 1. It's basically you're sacrificing 1 AP and then it's optimal from there on out. So it's not like the best thing ever, but it's also like, it's pretty darn good. So I'd rank those four as green. Riva, as I said, the choke points made me put her down at yellow. Jackdaw, again, like as I said in the last video, too much severe terrain. It does interfere with Guilty, it interferes with Montresor, so I'm often a little bit hesitant to bring Jackdaw into that kind of severe terrain. And of course, the Forest Concealing hurts. He has so many good ranged attacks. He has some of the best ranged attacks in the faction, really, and so Concealing is something to be conscious of. Yanlo, I've kind of marked as a yellow as well, in that he can like take Kenshiro and make anybody ignore severe terrain. He has Yin, he has Monos, but it does kind of restrict his build a little bit. Sometimes he does want to be building other things, whether he's Yanlo 1 or Yanlo 2. So I put him at yellow, but really for many builds he'd be at green there. Like if you want to do Yanlo on this map, he's going to be fantastic. Dr. McMorning, just no, his crew does not handle severe. The most common complaint about Kentori is that they're not unimpeded, and you would really, really feel that on this map. And when you combine that with corner symbols, you can see that Dr. McMorning is just red tier here. We don't want to bring him. So he's the only one we've eliminated, really. Faction match. I'm going to be attacker against Bayou, and I only have not that many games against Bayou, maybe 10 or 20, so like I'm definitely not an expert on this. But in my experience, Molly is a good matchup into basically every single Bayou crew. I'm not sure about the new Bayou titles, but all the original titles she seems great against. The diversion upgrade that they can do is annoying because she likes all her bonus action models, but at the same time they're so mobile they don't have to sit in that aura to begin with. So I find Molly is really, really good into Bayou. I've never really struggled with any of the Bayou matchups. Seamus I've put up there. I wasn't quite sure, but it just feels like Bayou does have a lot of really good minions, really good enforcers that Seamus just kills, and being able to say, no, sorry, you can't take your war pigs, or you can't take all your great enforcers, or Seamus will one-shot them, is actually quite awkward for people. Yanlo I've put into the green tier specifically for corner symbols because again that Toshiro is really, really good against factions without Don't Mind Me, and Bayou only has one model with Don't Mind Me, and it's Trixie Belle, and she's not good on this map. So I think for this specific setup, I think the Toshiro plan is a really, really good one. McMorning, I don't know of any reason he'd be bad into Bayou. They don't have any anti-healing that I know of. That he's, they have some condition removal. Some people say the Brewmaster matchup is terrible, but I don't believe it. I think the Brewmaster matchup would be really, really good for McMorning. So I think he's fine. There's just, and he also, the Bayou does have a fair amount of Armor 2 models. They're probably like the third highest prevalence of Armor 2 models in the game as far as factions go. And so McMorning brings a lot to the table there, so I'd say ordinarily McMorning into Bayou would probably feel pretty good, especially when you're considering his second title. Von Stuck into Bayou, I assume it's good, but I can't really think of what he's going to struggle with there. Kirai and Jackdaw, maybe I should have marked them as red, because there is a whole lot of stuff that does tactical ping damage. For instance, the Sparks combo, which just does 1,000,000 ping damage. And that's going to ignore Incorporeal, that's going to ignore Vengeance, and these are, so then you're potentially going to have Jackdaw taking like 8 ping damage in an activation, and like, you're going to start having to stone ping damage? That feels awful. So, and you're having to discard cards for the other attacks, and it's just, that doesn't sound great to me, so maybe I should have marked those two as red. Riva, a lot of people say that she's absolutely terrible into Bayou because they have so much marker removal. My experience is that she's fine, and maybe she should be yellow, but I ended up marking her as red in that, like, why give yourself an uphill battle? It's just a few more things for you to work around. But that said, if you hire Riva, it forces them to hire some marker removal, so it puts a little bit of pressure on them, especially if it's not a matchup where they want to be hiring Lucky Emissary. So Riva could go up to yellow, Jackdaw and Kirai could go down to red. I think they're both borderline there. Right, so that's the top level. Let's look at the schemes. And I just want to say at the beginning that this scheme pool is very difficult. It's bait and switch, deathbed, spread them out, catch and release, outflank. So for a lot of crews, you're going to be lucky to have two schemes where you feel like you can score all your points. So it's a rough scheme pool. So let's start with bait and switch. Well, we got to give the special mention to Dead Rider here, because he is so good with reap. You just select a model that can be reaped, you lay down a scheme marker, and then Dead Rider reaps them across the table at some point. Boom, there's your first point of bait and switch. This is corner deployment, so the second point is pretty good. However, it is symbols, so they are already trying to go deep into your territory. So this isn't... Symbols is probably one of the worst times to have bait and switch. It's much, much better on, for instance, break the line, when they don't want to be coming near your deployment zone, except for bait and switch. So it is not a great thing, this pool, and I would avoid it if at all possible. Seamus worth a special mention. Seamus and Yanlo are, and Tidal Yanlo as well, are very, very good at moving enemy models. So that makes you good at the first one, and it makes you good at the second one. They're both great at it. Molly's okay at moving enemy models, and she has activation control. So I've marked all those as green. Like, they all are probably about as good as you're going to get when it comes to bait and switch. Reaver Kirai and Jackdaw, I kind of just marked as yellow, and that, like, bait and switch is something anybody can do, particularly when you take into account the Dead Rider exists in this faction, so it's not really possible to have a red tier person for bait and switch in Resers, because the Dead Rider can sort it out. And McMorning, I've highlighted him as blue because Tidal McMorning has a lot of movement tools, so I think Tidal McMorning's probably at least a yellow, maybe a low-end green for bait and switch. Deathbeds. This one is very strategy dependent because the strategy determines how many markers you have available. You do not want to score deathbeds on symbols, because if you end the game with 2 scheme markers next to 2 symbols, the game has not gone well for you, right? Like, that's not how you want deathbeds to be going for you. So that second point is basically impossible for most crews, but we will note that the Carry-On Emissary does make it at least, possible. And you can do it with corpses as well, which is very clumsy. So I've marked everyone as red. I just don't think it's a doable scheme on this particular pool. Whilst you technically could pull it off, and if anyone does pull it off, please do post on the forums or something, because that's awesome. Reva deserves a special mention because she's got her pyre, she's got her corpses, she's got a bit of scheme marker trickery, so she can make it happen, I think. Denial-wise, Molly 1 and Yanlo 2 are pretty fantastic at denying deathbeds, so some special mentions there. Spread them out is... I think actually Resers are pretty good at spread them out. It just is... for spread them out, you need lots of movement, you need lots of interacting, so lots of AP. And I feel like Molly offers that. Archie can run over somewhere and drop some ski markers, or if he's busy, a Krilligan just teleports to him. And in fact, you can have one Krilligan teleport to one side, another Krilligan teleport to the other side, and you'll have 2 ski markers 10 inches apart, which is just... she's next level at it. Yanlo is, I assume, pretty good at it. I've had more experience with his Tidal, and his Tidal is phenomenal at it because he's got that Wary Road bonus action, and he's got the move 7 Kamainu with 3 AP, and he's got Monos, and he's got Yin, and he's just got all the tools you could possibly want for it. Kirai, I was, she just has so much AP, and she has Enslaved Spirits, which I know anybody can take, but, they fit her crew even better than usual. And if the Enslaved Spirits are dropping the scheme markers when they die, she just has a lot of tools to get the scheme done, I think. Seamus as well, his crew can do 1 or 2 of them, and he's usually has an opportunity to drop a scheme marker here and there. It does decrease his killing efficiency a little bit, but I think we still mark him green tier. Reva, Von Stuck, and McMorning, they all are perfectly capable of doing it, but they'd rather be punching someone in the face, to be honest. I think they usually are better off bundling up a little bit, being that spread isn't ideal. And Jackdaw, he doesn't want to spread out, he doesn't want to spend AP interacting, like it's just, forget about it on Jackdaw, I think. That's just not ideal. So that spread them out. For catch and release, I've put Molly there twice because she is just S tier. She is definitely like top 5 masters in the game for catch and release. She's insanely good at it, to the point that people know that Molly is going after catch and release, and she can score it anyway. Kruligan just stays really, really safe all game. Molly gains activation control. Kruligan teleports in end of the turn, and then she cheats a 13 for initiative the next turn, and the Kruligan teleports out. Or even if she loses initiative, often people can't quite manage to kill a Kruligan in a single activation. When you're set up well. And the great thing as well is when you're teleporting in for this catch and release, you're doing, I'm going to steal 2 soul stones because you're nearest soul stone user. So you're netting soul stones in this whole process. And she's just, she's just insanely good at it. It's like next level. Her title probably is still pretty good at it because Kruligans are just so insane. But what really puts it over the top is Molly 1's activation control. So it's really phenomenal. Von Stuck, the Necropunk's amazing at scoring it. They're very mobile, they can do it at the end of the turn, and they are very, very durable, so they're going to survive the retaliation. It is worth noting that with their leap nerf, the escape is a little bit harder for them now. You need to save that extra mask. It puts more pressure on your hand for the game. So that's a little bit difficult, but that's right. Jackdaw, first point, Hang gets in there, scores the first point, no problem. Unlike the others, the Hang doesn't need to run away. You just kill the crew. They can't stop you from scoring the second point if you've tabled them by turn 5. So I think Jackdaw's Hang just offer a lot for that. Riva I've also marked green because Bone Piles, same strategy as Kruligans. They just, turn 2 they bury, turn 3 they unbury, turn 4 they bury, turn 5 they unbury, and they basically are immune to retaliation for catch and release, unless they can single activation your 8 wound, hard to wound model in 1 activation. Maybe Riva should be marked yellow for this though, because she's not great at activation control because her corpse candles tend to die, but I find that if you don't have to summon the corpse candles, and so you can end up getting that activation control if you need to, but if you're playing a Riva crew that's aiming to potentially catch and release, make sure you're not too reliant on your corpse candles, because you may need to skip summoning them to secure activation control. Yanlo, McMorning, Seamus, and Kirai, I mean, they all have minions that could maybe do it, but they don't have like that insane, haha, I jump in and I jump away. You have a very narrow window to respond sort of thing going. Yanlo title, with Komainu, I think yes, I'd probably put the Yanlo 2 up at the green status. So I'd say overall Rezzers are just spoiled for choice, and are very, very good at catch and release relative to most factions, I would think. Last and least is Outflank. This is just, oh my goodness, what a terrible scheme. Like, I really liked it before the changes, or even after the first set of changes when you only needed 2 ski markers, but now you need 4 ski markers over the course of the game, out in the most, so if you're starting in this corner, you have to get ski markers in each of those corners. That's just, it's so bad. It's so bad. That said, it is in the pool with Spread Them Out, so this is worth a special mention. And I'll kind of go through Molly first for this. If you're in a pool with Outflank and Spread Them Out, it is helpful, because you can go to the positions for Outflank, and you can place ski markers, and your opponent doesn't know whether you're just trying to bait them because you're doing Spread Them Out, or whether you're going for Outflank. And that's very helpful. And Molly in particular is good at bluffing it, because she can send Kruligans there to drop the ski markers, and then they can teleport away if someone comes running at them, and they just giggle like the mad little children they are. So I think that almost is worth putting Molly up to yellow for it, for this pool in particular, but otherwise I wouldn't. Because the other consideration is it's just so many stones of models. To guarantee Outflank, you really need to commit maybe about 10 stones of models per flank, which is just way too much. That's way too much away from the rest of the game. But the crews that can afford to do that, Kirai and McMorning, Kirai 1 and 2, and Dr. McMorning 2, can summon so many models that they can do it. Summon crews are probably the best at doing Outflank in my view, because they can afford to send a few spare shit models to go summon without losing impact on the rest of the board. And if a fight breaks out on the flank, they can commit more stones to doing it. Seamus is also worth a mention because he will just teleport to this stone and drop a single scheme marker at the end of the turn, and then there's someone on the other flank, and then he scores it. So Seamus is also very good at scoring Outflank efficiently. So there we have it. So I think one of the biggest things to consider here is going to be the scheme pool and making sure that the scheme pool can be done efficiently. So for me, I think Molly is an absolute home run. I would definitely recommend Molly to any Reser players playing into this pool who are like playing to win. I have played enough Molly over the past year, and I'm trying to show a bit of variety, so I may not play Molly, we'll see. Other strong contenders, I think, Yanlo 2, very, very good at the map, the strategy, and the scheme pool. I think he's pretty adequate. Like, we've got Beta Switch, we've got Spread Them Out, we've got Catch and Release with the Komainu, as I mentioned. I don't think Outflank is on the table whatsoever for Yanlo in this pool. So that's alright. Seamus, I think, is quite good here. Like, he's got like some green for the strategies. He can take Carry-On Emissary efficiently. If he really wanted to go for deathbeds, or at least to leave that option open. Dead Doxies are actually okay at catch and release. Like, I'd say Seamus could legitimately score any of these schemes, so he's pretty good. Riva's like okay at everything. Not for me because I'm playing against Bayou, but for the non-Bayou folks, I think Riva's just bringing a lot to the table here, and keeping deathbeds open I think is pretty sweet, because she's just really signaling that like you don't know what doing against you. On Outflank for Riva, I should note that if you want, you could do a strategy with bone piles where you could probably unlock making that a yellow tier for her at least, but I think that's a bit clumsy. So she's pretty alright, and then yeah, so Seamus, Riva, Yanlo, Molly, I think are all great choices into this pool. I think Von Stuck, Kirai, and Jackdaw are all probably, like, if someone told me they were playing any of those masters into this pool, I'd say, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And if someone told me they were playing McMorning 1 into this pool, I'd ask, what are you up to? I want to learn what insights you have that I don't, because that's awesome. And if they were playing McMorning 2, I'd say, well, yeah, he is a little bit broken potentially, so I can see just playing him into everything. But yeah, so that's my thoughts for the pool. As usual, I would love to hear your thoughts. I respond the most on the forums and Discord, but I'll try to keep an eye on the YouTube channel as well. Thanks for listening.